Hi everyone, I hope you're having a great weekend. I am here just to share with you some of the books that I've read over the past month or so, the past 6 weeks. So the first one that I read, I finished this in early August, is The Witches by Stacy Schiff. I thought this was a good book in that there's a lot more focus on the legal feuds between the members of the Salem community, more so than a narrative of the witch trials themselves. She did there's a lot of narration regarding the witch trials, obviously, but I did like that she contextualized them in these legal feuds between families. It gave it a lot more context in the real world and how people became accused because of their past negative relationships with one another. So I thought that was good. I did think that it the narrative deviated quite a bit because of these tangential explanations about people's past, and that sort of detracted from the narrative. But otherwise, I did think this was a good book. So the next one that I read, just keeping in line with the witches theme, I do like to read a lot about the history of witchcraft and the development of persecution in Europe. But this is actually a piece of fiction. This is called The Witches Trinity, and it's by Erica Mailman. I really enjoyed this as much as you can when it comes to the persecution and the accusations of women and men who were condemned to die. But I liked this because I thought it was a very good historically accurate portrayal of how someone could have become accused. So this takes place in early 16th century Germany, and the Germans definitely take the mantle for having the most accused and suffering the most prosecutions when it comes to witchcraft. I mean, there's evidence for thousands of people being burned in a day in some cases. But anyways, back to this. So this takes place during early 16th century Germany. I don't know if the town is fictional or not, and in fact I can't remember the name, but it takes place during a famine. So people in the community are already not thinking clearly because of the bad harvests. But essentially, there is a woman who becomes accused, and she suffers a very gruesome death at the hands of a friar who comes to town, preaching the goodness of the Malleus Maleficarum, or the witch's hammer. So the narrative focuses on a woman called Gouda, who is an elderly woman. She's a bit addled in the mind, you could say, and she has visions of what could be perceived as witches. So eventually her own daughter-in-law accuses her, and whether or not that's because she genuinely believes that Gouda is a witch or not, or because she just sees her as another mouth to feed. This was such a good book in that it just shows, or it makes you feel how terrifying it must have been for individuals, and it gives you a sense of terror yourself, just in these situations, just how hungry people must have been and just how terrified of one another they must have been. You really couldn't trust anyone, and this happened for centuries. But anyways, I thought this was a good book for capturing the the witch vibe, for lack of a better word. So I do recommend this if you're looking for a historically grounded Halloween read this autumn. Anyways, moving on. That was the last of the witches theme that I've got. The next one was a Kindle read, and this is a book called The Byzantine World War by Nick Holmes. I enjoyed this a lot. It's a very short read, I don't think it's more than 200 pages, but what I really liked about this book is that when you read about the Crusades, or you're taught about the First Crusades, it always seems to start with the Pope Urban II's speech at the Council of Clermont, where he basically calls everyone to arms in Western Europe, and that's how the Crusade starts. But it what the problem with starting there, it completely brushes aside the Eastern Roman Empire's involvement, and indeed their centrality in the whole Crusades, because what had happened was Eastern Turkmen tribes were coming in from the east and encroaching on their territory, but it it doesn't that starting there really loses the focus on how really the Eastern Roman Empire contributed to its own demise, and eventually how they lost all of this territory to the newcomers. So I liked, sorry, I've got some notes here that I'm looking at. So yes, it starts with the um, I really like the description of the Battle of Manzikert and how that was a pivotal moment in the Eastern Roman Empires, or Byzantium's fall, and how that really led to them reaching out to the West and asking for assistance. There was a lot of Nick Holmes, I think, does a really good job of focusing on the squabbles and actually the downright treachery between nobles, and how that really contributed to the empire's inability to group together. He does a good job of really focusing on how the dissolution of the standing army and its increased reliance on mercenary forces virtually left it defenseless. And yeah, just how it was kind of a domino effect from there. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. It was a very short narrative. I don't think that's a problem if you just really want to learn about what happens before the Council of Clermont, and understand just the political situation before then. This is a great book for that reason. So moving on, the next book that I read, this was a good book, but I wouldn't say it was my favorite. This is Alison Weir's Catherine Swynford, the story of John of Gaunt and his scandalous Duchess. I've read other biographies by Alison Weir, and I like her because she focuses on women in the Middle Ages, and we don't really get to hear about them unless they're in chronicles, and they're normally portrayed in a bad light. But anyways, there's not a whole lot to go by for Catherine Swynford, and Alison Weir even mentions that in, I think, the foreword. The way she says it is, based on the scant evidence that we have for her, no one would even dream of writing a standalone biography about Catherine Swynford, but she attempts to do that, and I think she does a relatively good job. Obviously, there's a lot of focus on John of Gaunt. I mean, there's years where we don't have any records for Catherine Swynford, and I think maybe, I suppose it could be filler in that sense when we're talking about John of Gaunt, but I guess what we have to remember is that these two individuals had, a 30-year relationship, and just how important each other, one another was for, their stability as a person. So, there wasn't a whole lot that we could gather about Catherine Swynford from her personality, but I think Alison Weir does a good job of at least attempting to try to gain aspects of her personality based on what we know about her upbringing, her relationship with John of Gaunt, her first marriage, the evidence and records that we have for her relating to her households, etc. So yeah, it was a good book, but I wouldn't say it was my absolute favorite. But yes, recommend it if you're looking for a book on Catherine Swynford. moving on. The last book that I read is on the app Pear Lego, so I can't show it to you because it's on my phone, which I'm using to film. Um, it's by Charles Halperin, I think his name is, and it's called Russia and the Golden Horde. This was a very academic read. I enjoyed it because it does it offered me something that I've been struggling to find, and that's the relationship between um, Kievan Rus, Pontic steppe cultures, and the Mongol and the Golden Horde. Um, it, as I say, it was very academic. It looked at the political structure and the relationship between princes and Mongol administrations, and how after the Golden Horde disappeared, how the princes eventually maintained that administration and continued to tax the peoples, if not more. And really, I think the way he positioned it is that chronicles during this period were silent, and potentially we get the impression that they were quite oppressive, when in actuality they weren't, for reasons mentioned just above. And then, I mean, it took me a while to finish this. I think I started it in May. And I tend to save e-reads for commutes to work, so it did take me a while to finish it, and I had to go back through it quite a bit, just because when you stop reading it for a while, you sort of tend to forget bits of information. But anywho, that was a good book. And then the last one that I'll show you is the one that I'm currently reading, and I was really excited for this book when I saw that it was being released. This is Catherine Hanley's Two Houses, Two Kingdoms: History of France and England from 1100 to 1300. Firstly, I'll just say that I like Catherine Hanley's writing. She wrote a biography on Matilda, the Empress Matilda, and her struggle to reclaim the throne of England after it was usurped by Stephen of Blois, her cousin. But anyways, as I say, I was excited when I saw this come out, because I was always on the hunt for a book that gave me an equal measured look at the events during this period from the French side, because I think because as a mainly English reader, a lot of the books and biographies that I have access to are in English, and they'll mainly be naturally focused, or at least biased towards, an English perspective of the Middle Ages during this period. So I am so far 100 pages in, and I think she's doing a good job of giving equal explanation of events from the Capetian royal dynasty as opposed to just the Plantagenets. So we'll see how it goes. I mean, it's 200 years of history, and I think there's 300 pages here. So this, if you're looking for a very deep critical analysis, this book admittedly is not it. But if you're looking for an overview of events, this is a great book so far, and I'm enjoying it. I don't think I've learned too much that I haven't already, but it's good so far. Anyways, those are the books that I've read, and those are the books that I am currently reading. I've got some in the mail. I'm still putting together my Halloween reading list, which will start late September and go through probably till November, because Halloween is my favorite time of the year. But if any of you have any recommendations, fiction or nonfiction wise, I will be very much looking forward to reading those. So anyways, I hope you have a great rest of your weekend and a great week ahead, and bye for now.